Hello, everybody, wherever you are. This is Jonathan. We're going to wait about 30 or 40 seconds to let people join or come in for another meeting, and then we'll get started. So just bear with us. We were going to shoot for about 45 minutes max for this webinar today. So just hang on for a second. Everybody got their coffee? I do. Okay, let's rock and roll. My name is Jonathan Gostan. Thanks for joining our webinar today. It's going to focus on streamlining your application remediation process with Bugcrowd and Jira. Let's move right on ahead. I'm responsible for products here at Bugcrowd. Got a lot of background that shows my age and gray hair. And with me is Travis. Travis, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jonathan. My name is Travis Andrade, and I'm the product marketing manager here at Bugcrowd. I've been with Bugcrowd for about 3 years now, and I kind of started my cybersecurity experience here. So it's been a pleasure not only to learn from our customers about cybersecurity space itself, but also a lot of experts like Jonathan here, like Casey Ellis and like Haddix.
Sweet. So we're going to get started. If you have questions, what we're going to do is we're going to do them all at the end. So just go ahead and you can use the chat box in GoToWebinar and throw your questions in there. And then after we do all the slides, we'll go through the questions that are there. So for our agenda today, we're going to do a quick overview on a company, not too much because we know you want to get right to the meat of the presentation. I talk about some of the challenges we see between especially AppSec organizations and development in terms of managing vulnerabilities. And then we'll get into the meat of the presentation, which is how we support integration, in particular with Jira, so that you can work more closely with your development teams. And Travis is going to give us a live demo that shows the platform actually working. Fantastic. So as I think most people on the call know, we're the #1 crowdsourced security platform. We've been doing this for many, many years. We started the whole space. And basically the idea, of course, is, hey, use the intelligence and creativity of our adversaries to help you. There's a million different types of automated tools and AI and ML and all of that you can use, and good luck trying to figure out which one of those actually work and which ones are worth doing. But in the meantime, hey, you've got motivated attackers coming at you. Harness that same creativity, have them take a look at your attack surface, see what they can find, and go fix that first. So a very simple approach, very effective for our customers. How it works at a high level is very simple. We work on a program with you where you understand which targets you're going after, fill out a brief in terms of here are the targets that are in scope, here are the things that are not, here are the things that you're allowed to do and not allowed to do in the program. We engage either a public or more typically a private crowd that then starts and gets to work, signs a non-disclosure and gets to work looking at your attack surface. They find vulnerabilities in your software. They submit a submission report that comes onto our platform. You'll see that in the demo. At that point, our customer success and application security engineers triage that bug, make sure it's not a duplicate, agree on the priority, work with the researchers necessary, really provide that white glove service so that when it's thrown over in step number 3 to your application security team, it's properly formatted, validated, the exploits well documented, so you can get to rock and roll with it. At that point, the AppSec team makes a decision on how they want to prioritize it. And that's an interesting situation. We'll get into that on the next slide. And then at that point, of course, you push it over to development for the fix. Development fixes it, and then you report back, right? And so obviously, the big place where there can be friction in this is between 3 and 4, where you've got the application security folks who obviously are security focused, and then you've got development who have other priorities related to code velocity. And how do you sort of grease the skids between those two organizations is really the key topic that we're going to be talking to today. We tend to see 3 challenges come up most frequently when you're trying to work between the security or application security team and development. The first one is obvious. It's basically workflow. It's, oh, I'm in development. I use a development SDLC, a set of tools every day to manage my code. Please don't tell me that I have to do some out-of-band process or platform or system to handle security vulnerabilities, right? That's the last thing I need. So please integrate in as cleanly as possible with my software development lifecycle so that fixing a security bug is just like fixing any other bug. That's point number one. Point number two is more esoteric, very interesting, which is business prioritization. What we hear these days is, hey, listen, people get that security is important. It's not like development leadership says, oh, I don't care at all about security. That's not realistic or fair anymore. The bigger challenge is agreement on priority. So if remediating something is going to be a fair amount of work, what development leadership will say, well, you know, that's going to take my team off doing something else, which frankly I think is really important for the business. Is it really that much of a risk? Is the risk that high? And that comes down to a question of prioritization, not just with respect to how dangerous the vulnerability is per se, but what is the vulnerability of the business given the way the software is written. And for that, you need to really understand your business, how your software is used, where software is being deployed, and work with development to help make a decision there. It's not a simple like, oh, some taxonomy says it's priority one. No, it depends how is it being used in your software that really is really important as well. And then number three is remediation. So development people are not security people by default. We get very interesting discussions going when we ask people like, well, how are you shifting left and how are you dealing with DevSecOps and all of these kinds of questions? It's a very evolving space. Very few people have them down pat. And so what we find is that you need remediation guidance so that when the vulnerability is pushed over to development, you also push over as much information as possible about how to fix it. So they can fix it quickly and get to work, all right? So turning to our integration and how we integrate the work we do with AppSec teams into the developer's SDLC, there's basically four things we're helping you do. One, share, obviously push the workflow across, and you'll see that with Travis's demo. Provide as much information as possible to help development fix it quickly and also effectively, an effective patch, not just a Band-Aid. Track what's going on, so you have a responsibility in AppSec. Oops, lost my audio. Sorry, glitch there on the internet. And then the last one is reporting. So you can provide reporting both to development and then up the chain of command on your side. So for example, on the development side, what we find a lot is you'll either have like the wall of fame or the wall of shame. So you can't make development do very much, but you can either like shame them like, oh, Anna's team is doing a much better job fixing vulnerabilities than Travis's team, or the wall of fame, which is, oh, Travis's team is really killing it. They're doing a fantastic job. We all should be like Travis, and Travis wants to stay number one. So the reporting really helps with getting things done and motivating development. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it over to Travis, and he's going to go through the common Jira configurations we see and then provide the demo of the platform. Travis, all yours.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan. If you could just give me control of the slides, that'd be great. Stand by here, folks. Beautiful. Awesome. All right. And so as Jonathan said, one of the great things about our Jira integration is the robustness and the scalability that it provides for your organizations to tailor it to fit all of your common Jira configurations. And so we've had conversations with our customers, and three common Jira configurations that we see are single shared project, a security project, and a multi-Jira project configuration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through those three things, hopefully kind of tell a story that you can relate with and maybe see, based on your current processes, how we can support your crowdsourced security needs with our Jira integration. So the first one I want to talk about here is the single shared Jira project. And typically we see this with organizations that are a smaller scale, that have smaller engineering teams, and they typically manage their vulnerability remediation process in a single Jira project, whether that be just from their crowdsourced security tools or from all of their vulnerability tools. They store it in a shared project and development tasks from there. And so the workflow from crowd control looks a little bit similar like this. If you're looking at the image here, as Jonathan says, Bugcrowd, we here triage and validate, take that overhead lift off of you guys so that you can identify exactly what vulnerabilities are real. And once your security teams accept those vulnerabilities and decide that it needs to be fixed by development, they'll move it in crowd control from a triage to an unresolved state. At that point in time, our Jira supports an automated ticketing, which creates a ticket in that single shared Jira project. And at that point in time, your development team can then get the right information that enables them to fix that vulnerability. And we'll talk a little bit more when I go through the demo about this ability to customize field configuration so that you're aligning the right information in crowd control, like remediation advice, like resources that are going to enable your development team to quickly and successfully fix that vulnerability. And then additionally, it's important once it's fixed that your security team knows that that vulnerability has been fixed, and maybe to initiate any type of retesting, whether that be your security team or on Bugcrowd. Bugcrowd does offer a retesting service that you could reach out and utilize. But with our bidirectional sync, you're able to, once development closes that Jira ticket, it will automatically sync and transition that vulnerability in crowd control from the unresolved state to the resolved state, notifying your security team that, hey, this has been fixed. So that's the first instance that we typically see. The next one that we see is the security Jira project. And if some of you were with us on our last webinar that was with Dave Faro from Barracuda, this is basically the instance that they run at their organization. And so the way that this one works is we typically see either like mid-sized to enterprise organizations that have multiple development teams run this type of configuration. And so just as I said before, Bugcrowd will triage and validate those vulnerabilities once your team has accepted those vulnerabilities and moved into an unresolved state. Again, we streamline those vulnerabilities, automatically creating a ticket in the security Jira project. This is when security teams typically will work in Jira, and typically organizations want, some security teams want to be able to control the vulnerability management process. And in order to do that, if they're working in that security project, they can better, because security teams at the end of the day have a better context and understanding of your tech stack. That's the reality, and you know better than the researcher and much better than Bugcrowd. And so as we do provide our VRT rating for that vulnerability, you're going to have a better understanding of how that vulnerability affects the business impact of your organization. And by doing so, you can prioritize those vulnerabilities, whether it just be the crowdsourced vulnerabilities or it be vulnerabilities from all your security tools in that single security project. And from there, distributing those vulnerabilities based on the criticality to the development teams that are responsible for the applications that are affected by that vulnerability. And so one thing that I do want to note that our Jira integration helps out with in this instance in particular is custom field configurations, which avoids overriding work in Jira. Let me give you an example of this. So if the business impact of that vulnerability changes in a particular instance based on what your security team is able to investigate when looking at the vulnerability, that may change in the Jira ticket. Additionally, we do provide remediation advice and industry standard resources based on our VRT classification within crowd control that's automatically generated because it's mapped. And what will happen is if you have, as a security team, have more business context, you're able to add on top of that remediation advice additional information that's going to enable your development team to fix that vulnerability. And in doing so, you may add this information to that Jira ticket. But what you don't want is when a submission is updated, when that submission is updated in crowd control, for that information to overwrite the edits that you made in Jira. And so there's configuration setting in our Jira integration that I'll show you in our demo that will enable you to hold the data integrity of that field in particular so that that doesn't get overwritten. And lastly, like I said, you'll be able to retain control. So with that being said, I want to move on to the third project or the third configuration, which is the multiple Jira project. And what this does is enables organization to streamline the vulnerabilities directly to the development teams straight from crowd control. And so typically we see organizations from enterprise organizations most oftentimes utilize this type of configuration. And one of our customers, Outreach, which I'll go ahead and show a quote a little bit later, but they're actually utilizing their Jira instance like this. And one of the differences between the first two and this one is that there won't be an automated Jira ticket creation, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to create noise for those development teams, because if you're sending vulnerabilities that aren't applicable to the developers based on what target it's affected, then all you're doing is creating noise. And so our Jira integration supports multiple Jira instances by allowing you to manually push with a single click of a button that submission to your developer who is responsible for that vulnerability or for the application that's the vulnerability has affected. All right, so that enables easily ability to assign vulnerabilities to the right developers. But what also does is it allows you to manage those tickets and track them back, just as I said before in the first configuration, where once that ticket is closed in Jira, it'll go ahead and automatically sync to crowd control, transitioning that submission from an unresolved state to a resolved state. Awesome. So I just want to kind of wrap all of this stuff on the bow, because what I did was talk about a lot of features of the Jira integration within different story sets, but I want to kind of bubble this all up into the value that our Jira integration presents to you as a customer. And first and foremost, with the multiple Jira project support, we have a scalable integration that supports anybody's existing workflow. So whether it be, configuration number 1, configuration number 2, configuration number 3 as a customer, or if you have some other way of processing your vulnerability management, this integration enables you and has flexibility to tailor that to your needs. Secondly, we lower vulnerability management overhead, and this is by streamlining those vulnerabilities directly into your SDLC, right? By using a simplistic system that gets the right information, that remediation advice, that those industry standard resources, and a vulnerability severity rating in front of your developers so they understand the criticality of it and how they can better enable to successfully fix that vulnerability. And lastly, just jumping right into that, the expedite the vulnerability remediation and process by giving you that custom field configuration to make sure that the right information is getting in front of them. All right, with that being said, I really want to quickly highlight Outreach's use of our Bugcrowd Jira integration and how it enabled them to support their existing process. And so Martin Roos, the CISO at Outreach, basically we met up with him in Las Vegas, had a really good conversation, and he said that it's really huge to be able to directly push vulnerabilities into our Jira queue. We don't have to treat it any differently. Depending on what part of our application is affected, a ticket is created and tasked to their team responsible for building it. So they're able to quickly just push those vulnerabilities to the responsible party. And so with that being said, I'm going to be able to actually show you what this looks like. All right. So what I first wanted to be able to do is, if you haven't already set your Jira integration process up, I just want to quickly show you how you need to navigate to get there. So first, go to the settings. You'll then jump into the integrations tab, and then lastly, click on the Atlassian Jira integration. And so what you're seeing here in front of you on the platform is 4 Jira instances that are set up already. If you're setting this up for the first time, you won't see this. You'll see on the right-hand side, you can add a Jira integration. You'd simply click that to get started. But what I want to highlight here is, like I said, the support for multiple Jira project instances. And so if I have a team that's responsible for web applications, if I have a team that's responsible for mobile applications and API, I can set up a tailored Jira configuration to ensure that the right data gets pushed to the right researchers at the right time so that we're getting that fixed as easily and seamlessly as possible. All right, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and jump into the configuration. And here I will show you that I can select and configure the exact project that I want to push these vulnerabilities to. In this instance, I'm going to go ahead and go with the test project. Secondly, just to kind of highlight the whole customizability, we understand that Jira is also extremely customizable, and some organizations may consider your issue type a vulnerability or a bug. In this instance, we'll consider it a bug, but we know that you set your instances up in how you'd like, and we want to be able to map to that. And so that we do that here. Additionally, we also provide the ability to update these comments automatically. So when in crowd control you update, whether that be a team member or a researcher sends in a comment on that submission, it will automatically sync it to Jira so that development sees that. However, we understand that that also could be considered noise. And so we have the ability here to either select that to be on or off, depending on what works best for your workflow. Lastly, gonna go ahead and put our hats on and say, for configuration number 1 and configuration number 2 that we talked about, where it gets pushed automatically to a single Jira instance, this is where you would set up your automatic Jira creation. And what this would do is when I moved a submission from an unresolved or from a triage to an unresolved state, it'll automatically create that Jira ticket instance. However, if you're doing a multi-Jira project configuration, this is something you would probably want to select to be off so that you can control where the submissions are being pushed to and what development team. That way you're ensuring that no noise gets to a particular development team. And then moving on, this is where you would set up the resolution tracking. And this is that ability we use a webhook to basically utilize Jira to notify crowd control that when a Jira ticket is closed or moved to done, and you get to set which state is set for done, or which state you guys use for a closed state. In this instance, we'll say done. But once that happens, that automatically crowd control will be synced and transition that submission from an unresolved state to a resolved state. All right. Lastly, I want to get into the custom field mapping, and this is kind of really an important feature that enables you to get the right data into the ticket for your development to ensure that they have the right information to fix that vulnerability. And so a couple of things that I want to highlight here is, like I said earlier, we had the remediation advice and we have the resources here. I highly recommend creating a customized field in Jira and syncing these two together, because it's going to create a clean report for your development team to be able to utilize a guide to help them successfully fix those vulnerabilities. Additionally, we know that some organizations use CVSS as a priority rating system. It's an internal language that many developers understand and know that when a vulnerability is rated closer to a 10, that's something that is at a high risk. It needs to be fixed immediately. And so we have mapped our VRT classification to the CVSS so that when the VRT rating is set, it will automatically generate a CVSS score, and that can be mapped and pushed into a Jira, into the Jira ticket. Additionally, I did mention the configuration setting, and that's what you're seeing here on this right-hand side. And that's this ability to either set a submission to update every time it's updated, or to push only once. And that's when that instance I told you, when you add additional information from like a security project in the remediation advice field or in the resources field, I don't want my work and my edits to be overwritten by a submission edited in crowd control. And so in order to avoid that and hold the data integrity, I would set this field to update only once. All right, so now that you have a good insight into how to set that up, what that looks like, before I jump into what this integration looks like when I push the submission, I want to first highlight, when it comes to mapping these particular fields, one of the common instances that we see, or problems that customers come across, is the fact that if you have any required Jira fields when mapping this integration, if you do not map a Bugcrowd field directly to that required field, an error will pop up. You will not be able to actually push that submission into Jira. So there's two solutions for that. One, you either find a Bugcrowd field that is applicable and for that required field and map it to it, or two, you just basically set that field to not be required, and then you'll be able to push that submission easily over to your Jira. All right, that being said, let's go ahead and jump into what this looks like. So as Jonathan said before, new submissions will come in as processed. Bugcrowd will go ahead and triage and validate those vulnerabilities. Once it's been triaged, we will push it over to the security teams to review and accept. And in this instance, we'll go ahead and go with an SQL injection that I have written up here. And I want you to first think about the first two configurations that we talked about. So forget that we're using multi-project. We're just using one single project to push over this vulnerability. And so I have this umbrella corp here set up for the auto ticket creation. So keep it really simple. I've gone through this submission. I understand that it is something that needs to be fixed by development. And all I have to do here is move it to an unresolved state. And in doing so, we always recommend that you pay out at this point in time. Great job, researcher. And we'll go ahead and pay out for this vulnerability. But you'll see here that a ticket was automatically already created in Jira. And if I just simply click on the link here, this will pop up and you'll see how with my custom field mapping, how clean this Jira ticket is set up with a label for Bugcrowd, with a CVSS rating, with the Bugcrowd, with the bug URL, the remediation advice that we pumped in there, the resources, the VRT classification, and Bugcrowd's priority and description. So all of these things are included. It's very clean, very easy for your development team to read and understand. And of course, I always put the remediation advice and resources at the top so that they understand, hey, this is the correct guidance and the best way that you can fix this vulnerability quickly and effectively. Awesome. What I want to be able to also show you is, so we're in a to fix state right now. Sorry, I'm kind of jumping back and forth, but as a developer, I've decided, hey, okay, cool. I've patched this vulnerability and I am going to go ahead and move this to a done state. Beautiful. So the vulnerability is fixed. And at that point in time, all I have to do is refresh. Beautiful. We'll go ahead and move on. And I want to show you another instance, and this would be the multi Jira project instance. And so for this instance, we're looking here at an iDoor on Umbrella iOS app. So now that I've identified, hey, this is on my mobile app, I want to just be able to not push this to all of my team members, but just to push it to the team responsible. And that's here, this mobile application. The Silver team is responsible. All I have to do is simply push the push to Jira, and it simply creates a Jira integration here. And then at that point in time, you would move this, to an unresolved state. And also, great job, researcher. And they're paid out. Awesome. So sorry, that's unresolved. So those are the two instances where you'd see, and I have access at any point in time to push those. Say maybe I messed up and this is more applicable to the web application, I can push that to the web application team as well. So that pretty much sums up our Jira integration. I hope this was all really helpful for you. I think at this time, Jonathan's probably going to ask a few or look at the questions here, and we'll walk through a few answers for some of the questions that we're getting.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Travis. So let's see. So we got a few questions here. I'm going to crank them up. And since Travis is the smart guy in the room, I think you're going to get stuck with most of the answers. So the first one is pretty obvious. Do you support both cloud and on-prem Jira instances? So actually, that's one that even dumb old me can answer. So yeah, absolutely. They're both supported. And of course, we see both out in the wild. Let's see. Now the questions come in here. Can I use the Jira integration? Oh, can I use Jira integration on multiple programs?
Yeah, I can take that. So that's a really good question, because this entire time I was talking about multi-Jira project support. But the answer to that question is absolutely, with no additional cost. Our Jira integration comes with no additional cost. It comes with the platform itself. And utilizing it on multiple programs, if you have an on-demand program, if you have a private, a public program, or even a vulnerability disclosure program, you can utilize a Jira integration instance in each of those programs. And the great news is you can push those vulnerabilities to the same project, or you can push them to different projects. The flexibility of this integration enables you to not only have multi-project support, but you also have multi-program support.
Cool, that's great, boss. And so for people on the call, if there's any questions you want to throw in the chat box and go to webinar is the place you'll use it to push it in. So let's see, there's another one. Oh, it says you showed the basic config, but are there other specific Jira requirements to sync the integration? So other than, I guess, what you showed in the setup. Are there other requirements for Jira configuration setup other than what you showed?
Yeah. So absolutely. So I kind of browsed through the authentication, but all you need as a Jira user to set this up is the sign-on, your password, as well as the Jira URL. There's additional things to think about. You do need the ability to or permission to create a ticket in Jira. So if you can create a ticket in Jira, if you have the permissions to do so, then you can set up this Jira instance. One other thing that I do want to highlight, if you do use the webhook, the bidirectional sync, you will need either site admin access or at least to reach out to your site admin, and he'll be able to set that up for you.
Okay, cool. And oh, this is a good one, boss. This is how's your Jira integration different from other crowdsourced security platforms?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think I mentioned this before, but I think I just want to sum it up really simply, is that our Jira integration in our current space has the most robust and scalable configuration abilities. And so what I mean by that with the robustness is the ability to use custom configured fields is to ensure that the right information gets in front of the right researchers. So that also goes with the scalability. This multi-project and multi-program support enables you to, no matter what your processes are, if you're a smaller organization that only has a single shared project, you can push those vulnerabilities and work it through in your current SDLC. Or if you're an enterprise organization that has a large development team with multiple different projects, we can still support those needs no matter what your process is.
Okay, cool. There's a question from Mike, but Mike, could you clarify the question? It's in the panel, but I don't really understand it, so I don't want to. Can you see it over there, Travis? I can't figure it out right there. No. Oh. Anybody else who wants to ask a question, go ahead and feed it into the chat box. We'll stay online for a few more seconds, see if anything else comes in.
So you had a Resident Evil question. That's what it was. Yeah, the question was, there you go. I can pull it up for you. Yeah. There you go. Do star members ever interfere with Umbrella's plan? It's a good question. And unfortunately, I'm not as big as a Resident Evil fan as the individual who set this program up. But my answer will be, I'm sure they always try to interfere, but we do our best to defend.
Yeah, nice one. Any question, we got the answer. Any last questions? Otherwise, I think we're done. The bottom line is, I would say at this point, go ahead and put your question in if you still have something. Good answer, yeah. So, here there's one more coming in, but I don't see it yet. Here we go. Here it is, right? Hold on a second. Is nice. But it's an integration. Oh, so I guess the question is, it's from Katie, and I guess it says nice integration, but it's not really an integration into software development lifecycle. So I guess what I would say, and maybe Travis, you got an opinion on it. So the reality, I mean, a lot of people do lots of different things for their software development lifecycle, and as people move more to Agile, we're seeing all kinds of different things coming into that workflow, and it's turning into that, more infinity symbol, more continuous development for sure. The reality is just when we talk to customers in terms of what they actually use now to remediate any vulnerability, and I'm talking about a Bugcrowd vulnerability, but something they're getting off their scanner or red team or pen test or whatever, they say, hey, listen, our workflow is we shove it into Jira, and then we try to get the developers to fix it in there, and then we report back. That's just the way they're rolling. And of course, what we try to do as much as possible is fit into whatever process our customers have, because the last thing you want is multiple processes you're trying to handle in parallel. It's bad enough just having one. Some customers, for example, are implementing threat and vulnerability management systems. I actually was talking to a customer overseas this morning who's doing exactly that. And so then the idea is like, oh, push all the submissions into the vulnerability management system. They'll do their prioritization correlation, what have you there, and then there'll be a single flow that comes down from the bottom of that. So we're integrating with those guys. Actually, our APIs are strong enough that they can actually take those submissions in without us making any modifications to the APIs. I get a lot of questions like, send me the API docs, and my response is, well, just go to Google and type in Bugcrowd API, and they're there. They're very well documented. So if you are using something besides Jira, I'd encourage you to check out those APIs, and you'll probably find that you can take those APIs as is. Travis, any other comments?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, let's see. Can you see we got one more here? This is from Dina. Distracted from part of the demo. I don't believe it. I'm hurt. Let's see. What do they do to make sure that the info that ends up being pushed to the ticket concise report rather than the researcher reports tends to be less usable? So basically, I'll take a shot at it and then you take a shot at Travis. So basically, that's a big part of the Bugcrowd value add is we just don't take whatever the researcher throws in and throw it over the wall to you. We only do managed programs, which means there are application security engineers and customer success people involved at all stages of the process. So if there's something that's unclear, if there's not enough documentation on recreation, we are the ones at our triage process who will ask the researchers to clarify that. Maybe English isn't their first language, and so parts of it are unclear just because of the use of the language. Hey, that's cool. We'll ask them to clarify, clean that up so that when it comes to you, the AppSec person, it's in darn good shape. That, frankly, is one of the reasons why you pay for the service. Anything to add there, Travis?
Yeah, no, I think you covered it pretty well, and kind of just reiterate that you want to. I'm sure if you missed the part of the custom field mapping, but you can definitely identify which fields are most important or going to be most useful to your development team, and then avoid or leave out whatever fields are basically considered noise to your development team, and you decide when that's pushed, whether that be when you automatically have it pushed on the unresolved state, or as you're seeing, so what I'm showing up here, if you can still see my screen, is I can manually push that with a single click to this update to Jira button. But you have the control to decide when that's pushed and what's pushed based on the custom field mapping, as well as the ability to choose when you want to push those tickets. So you can clean the ticket up in the Crowd Control platform, and then once that's cleaned up, you can identify, hey, now I want to push this submission or this ticket over to Jira.
So, thank you very much. I'm still getting over the fact that everybody wasn't paying strict attention to every word. I mean, can you believe that, dude? So we got one more here. It comes from Maurizio calling from Naples. I don't know where Maurizio's calling from, but thanks for the question, Maurizio. He says, in each project, we identify different targets of evaluation. How does Bugcrowd link this target of evaluation with Jira? Do you know that one, Travis? If not, we'll have to take it offline with Maurizio.
Yeah, we may have to take that offline. I think I'd need more clarification on the targeted evaluation. What exactly? How does Bugcrowd link this? Yeah, it'd probably have to, if you reach out to us, we'd be more than happy to kind of discuss this a little bit more and give you an answer.
Yeah, we'll take it offline, Maurizio. I'm sorry we don't know the answer, but we'll get right back to it. I think I'm looking, that is the last one. Thanks very much, folks, for your thanks for your questions. Travis, thanks for doing a great job setting the demo up and doing a presentation. Thanks to Anna for organizing. We're done, everybody. It's coffee or beer, depending on what time zone you're in. And everybody have a good day. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.